Joe, Christie, at this point, I guess, how would you characterize his play in the presidential race? Complicated. He raises a lot of money for the party. He's still a big draw, but there are questions.
It's getting less complicated by the day. Nicole Wallace, when Chris Christie got in trouble 6 months ago, people turned to Jeb and said, boy, we really need you to run. We love Jeb. But the longer Jeb's name's been out there, the more questions have been raised. Does he really want to do it? Are there, a lot of problems surrounding him? You look at the poll numbers, he's upside down in a big way in general elections. Jeb's looking at those numbers, I'm sure. I haven't talked to him about it. But you almost get the sense that Chris Christie and his camp are saying, okay, the smoke's starting to clear. They've looked at Jeb. This is a zero-sum game. He's either the establishment candidate or I am. And this morning, it's looking more like Chris Christie. And if I'm Chris Christie, I'm absolutely thrilled that a nationwide conservative group thinks I actually could have the power to appoint Supreme Court justices as President of the United States. Like, this guy is back in play, and he's ahead in a lot of polls. Very fascinating.
This is a news show. Their slobbering love affair with Chris Christie is beyond gross. See, the problem with the media in the U.S., the mainstream media, is exactly what they're doing right there. All they're doing is pure speculation and opinion, and I think this and they think that, and let's talk about Chris Christie ad nauseum, ad infinitum. They never reported the facts on Chris Christie. Hey, here's a radical idea. How about you go to his record when you talk about him? You ever heard that saying, actions speak louder than words? That's actually true. I don't give a shit about your opinion on Chris Christie, Joe Scarborough, because we knew that from the beginning. You loved the guy from the beginning. How about instead of just talking from your gut and being visceral and using emotion, say, I like the guy, he's fat and he makes me feel good. He's up the ass of the establishment, and I love the establishment. How about instead of doing that, you give us some information, some data about what he's done in office? You know, give us the reality. But no, the reality conflicts with the narrative that they like about Chris Christie, so they just brush aside the reality and they go, well, he's making a comeback, Well, number one, we don't know that. Number two, if he does end up making a comeback, it's because idiots like you in the mainstream media are allowing him to make a comeback. Because you're not reporting the facts every time you bring his name up, which you should do. So, I'll do what they won't do. Let's go ahead and look at his record here and see if he deserves all this adoration that he's getting. So, one of the things that he did is cut taxes, and he's open about that. He says, look, I'm a guy who likes to cut taxes, and in many respects, he actually got elected on that message. Now, he didn't actually cut taxes for you, for middle-class people and lower-income people. He decided to cut taxes for corporations and the rich. So let me give you some details. He gave $80 million to Goya, the company Goya. Now, the whole reasoning behind that was, well, they promised that if I give them this money, that they're going to go ahead and create jobs in the state. So how many jobs did they create? 9. Isn't that amazing? That right there should be a national news story. That should be, talked about endlessly. You could do a week on that alone. The massive failure of Chris Christie's economic policy. Goya promised to create jobs. They created 9. Chris Christie has been had by Goya and by big corporations. But they don't do that. They don't talk about facts. They don't talk about substance and economic policy. They want to talk about how Chris Christie makes them feel. He also gave Campbell Soup $42 million as well for them to create jobs in Camden. They proceeded to cut 100 jobs. Again, I don't know why the media isn't talking about this forever. He also bragged about raising New Jersey's retirement age. Well, that should be important. Maybe you should bring that up because I don't think the American people would agree with him on doing something like that. He cut aid to public schools by $1.3 billion, another policy the American people hate. He cut state pensions by $3 billion. Again, the American people hate it, but they're not talking about that. And at the same time he was doing that, he's actually increasing spending in other areas. So where did he decide to increase as he was cutting stuff for you? Well, he spent $18 million to bring the Super Bowl to New Jersey, and he spent $400 million to improve the Meadowlands. So he's handing over this big, giant corporate welfare check to the NFL while he's cutting public education and your pensions. Stay classy, Chris Christie. So you can't forget his scandals either. You have to remember this is the guy that shut down a bridge, the busiest bridge in the country, because a mayor wouldn't endorse him. So that was his political payback. And what happened as a result of this? Well, 4 people were late to the emergency room because of the traffic caused by Chris Christie. 1 woman died, and a search for a missing 4-year-old was delayed because of it. Now, look, I'm going to bend over backwards to be fair here to Chris Christie and say, let's put aside that scandal completely, okay? Because some people say, oh, we're going to come up with a bullshit defense here and say he didn't know about it and have some bullshit special investigator who is friends with Christie say, oh, he didn't know about it. So let's just get rid of that scandal completely, put it out of your mind, pretend as if it doesn't exist. Well, even if we do that, Chris Christie is still a very bad guy because here's a fact that's seldom discussed in the media, and again, it should be talked about ad nauseum. He gave out Hurricane Sandy FEMA money based on which mayors of which places supported him. So some places needed the disaster relief money way more, and they got very little or none of it in some cases, right? And other places which had very little damage from the hurricane got more money. Why? Because those are the places that had the political operatives who supported Chris Christie when he was running for re-election. So here's a guy who, right there, boom, you're done, man. If the media wasn't fucking piss poor, they would talk about that for a month straight and say, how dare this guy snub American men and women from New Jersey who had a hurricane destroy their livelihoods and their homes. And they didn't get relief money simply because their mayor didn't support you strongly enough and you gave it to people who didn't need the money? No, that's totally unacceptable. But worst of all, did you know Chris Christie gave away pieces of the World Trade Center to his donors as a gift? We don't even need to talk about the Bridgegate scandal. His record is enough to show how horrible of a governor and a person he is. Now, here's the sad reality. Is he making a comeback? Is there a chance for Chris Christie moving forward? Yes, there is. But the only reason why there is because the piss-poor media, including Morning Joe here, they refuse to do their job as they should, which is take your emotions out of it and your dumbass speculation out of it and just report the data. If you did that, he would have no chance and there would be no revival.